Hello and welcome to Ice Cream Uploads here on Ice Cream Uploads on YouTube, as well as all our podcast services. I hope you're having a fantastic day. We are doing something a little bit different today. I know there's someone on the opposite side of the screen that you're not really used to seeing. I mean, you've been on the channel before now, Asim. This is just a different way, different format.
Yeah. But happy to be here. Happy to be here.
So usually the scoop would be 10 a.m.-ish. Every single weekday over at twitch.tv/uploads. But there's a very polarizing game that's happened in the last 2 weeks. I have no idea when this is going to go out, so I've used the bracket of 2 weeks because it's a nice little time span. But those of you that have been around this channel for long enough know that I'm a massive Resident Evil fan. The posters behind me indicate this. I've not just put them up for the purpose of this podcast. They've been up there for a while now. If you follow any of my social feeds, all the Ice Cream Upload ones, we've streamed this game. We've streamed Resident Evil games on this channel numerous times. And Asim is a big Resident Evil fan as well, which is why we've drafted him in, because we've had a conversation. We know Twitter's had a conversation. Forums have had a conversation. Reddit's had a conversation. The world is exploding with opinions on this. And I couldn't think of somebody else better to bring in to help me come to a conclusion about this game. So, Asim.
Yes.
I'm gonna start this conversation off, right? I don't think Resident Evil 8 Village is a bad game. But there's massive caveats in this. My opinion of this game so far, and now I've just started a second playthrough on hardcore, so the pressure is off from a storytelling standpoint now. The gameplay mechanics, for me, are what saved this game. The storyline, the plot, it doesn't feel like a Resident Evil game. This game feels like a fan service game. It feels like they've just taken all of the elements of past Resident Evil games that either people have liked, potentially didn't like, but then try and put a story together with characters we're not that too familiar about, we don't know much about, but then sandwiching Chris in there to try and make something of the story. That is my opinion of the game so far. What is your opinion of the game?
So I've had one playthrough on normal, and then I've started stupidly on the Village of Shadows difficulty, which is like wow. That the opening section is ridiculous. Just one hit and you're pretty much like you need to restore your health again. But the playthrough that I did on normal, I really liked it. I listened to obviously, like, we've discussed it, but I've listened to other people's opinions as well, like people I respect, like Kind of Funny Games.
Top guys over there.
Yeah, and I think my kind of opinion goes with like most of those guys were there. I like it. I don't love it. Like, if I was to say a game that I love in the series, it's Resident Evil 2. That's my absolute favorite.
Remake or original? Not that it matters.
Original probably, because the remake, they changed some bits here and there. 3 went too far away, I think, from the original.
Agreed.
Personally. But yeah, 2. But the original, but the remake is also very, very good, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah, with Village, I like it. I don't love it. But liking it is obviously, really good as well at the same time.
Of course it is.
I feel like the first half was, and we'll probably go into more detail about this. First half was great.
Yeah.
And the second half was like probably ranges from like decent to good. That's probably what brings it down from a love it to a like it.
Yeah.
That's where my head's at the moment. And you're absolutely right. The mechanics of the game and like just the pure gameplay wise, it's just very engaging from moment to moment. That's what probably keeps you going, even if you, like you're saying, like you didn't probably enjoy certain parts of it. That's probably what keeps you going. That's where my head's at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I again, this is probably where our difference of opinions gonna go down a forked road, shall we say, with this one. But yeah, the gameplay mechanics are what saved this game for me, because I feel like after the first 3 or 4 hours, depending on how fast you complete the game, I think the average is probably 8.5 hours for your first playthrough, and then once you upgrade your weapons, it just becomes so. I'm playing it on hardcore now, and I couldn't imagine starting the game off in hardcore without the weapons that I've got now. So I've got a fully maxed out handgun, got infinite ammo, fully maxed out shotgun. I'm just saving up enough CP to be able to go and buy that for infinite ammo, and then I can move on to the Village of Shadows, not starting it on my second playthrough like you absolute mentalist.
I'm going to go back to hardcore, I think.
So I'm going to work my way through the difficulties, but yeah, I feel I thought it was going to be a little bit different. I stayed away from all of the. I played the first demo. Is it the Maiden one where you just get to have a fart about the castle for maybe 5 or 10 minutes? Yeah. I played that one just to get a grasp of what the mechanics were going to be of the gaming. So what I really wanted was more of 7, just a little bit different, because 7 for me was the start of where Capcom started to bring people back in to a Resident Evil franchise. We had 7, we had Remake 2, we had Remake 3. For all its flaws, was still a brilliant game, and this was the next one where I thought, do you know what? If the build off of the survival horror element of 7, then we're in for an absolute winner. I knew it was going to be difficult because you're taking Resident Evil 7. The storyline was okay to a degree, but it brought the horror back into it again. That's all I wanted from a Resident Evil game. I just wanted to be terrified. I turned my light off. I turned the lights off in here. I closed my curtains. I want to be terrified, at least for my first playthrough. And I got that a lot of the time with Resident Evil 7. The molded were fantastic, especially when you started to go into the basement for the first time. Yeah. That was petrifying. That's what I wanted more of, and I thought that's what we were going to get, and we did to a certain degree. There was a few jump scares in Resident Evil 8 where I thought, okay, this is something we can look forward to this. But the first Lycan battle that you mentioned before, that you ended up dying on Village of Shadows, it was quite difficult on hardcore. I couldn't imagine trying that on Village of Shadows just yet, but the bell going off instantly takes you back to Resident Evil 4, and you're waiting for Leon to drop his famous lines. So that's what I thought, okay, this game is probably more fan service than it's going to be scary. The press leading up to this was we tried to tone it down because people were saying Resident Evil 7 was too scary. That's when the alarm bells start ringing a little bit. Staying away from the demos, barring the Maiden one, was probably the wisest choice I made, because I thought it may have spoilt it too much. Getting to run around the village for an hour, I think it was, and then they extended it because of the really daft demo times. I can't believe they did something like that. Never do that again. Never do that again. But I thought that may show too much. It may show the hand too much, and I think it did. A lot of people have mentioned that. I'm glad that I didn't get that. But as a setting for Resident Evil Village, bearing in mind the title of the game, do you think that the settings and the environments that we got, I know which one you're going to say is your favourite, because I can guarantee it's probably going to be my favourite as well, but all the settings put into play, what was your favourite setting of the village?
I think the overall setup of the village and the castle and the house and like back to the village again, was really nicely done. Like it was done in a way. It was. I know some previous Resident Evil games have like elements of this, but it was almost done in a way like a Souls game, where like you go down a path, almost like I guess a Metroidvania game in a way as well, where you go down a certain path one way, like it's locked, like you have to come back later, and it opens another path to another area, to another path, and it's a bit more open world and a bit more explory in that sense.
Yeah,
I like that. And I know some people probably won't like that because I guess it goes against the normal conventions of a survival horror game, where you're kind of funneled down a set path pretty much, and that's how I guess the previous Resident Evil, like the best in the series, if you were to say like 2 and 3 and 1 and like even Code Veronica, etc., go down that path. But this it opens things up a bit, which I liked to a degree. A lot of people would probably call it backtracking as well, which is fair, because you do go back to the same areas a lot. But apart from, to answer your question, apart from the obvious one, which we'll probably talk about in greater detail because I think that was fantastic. The castle was great. I would have loved to see the castle expanded on a bit more. It was, as you will probably say, it was like reminiscent of like the Spencer Mansion.
Oh, absolutely.
And just like it had that claustrophobic vibe, especially when you're being chased by not only Lady D but her daughters as well. So you're always constantly on edge. Like once that happens for the first time, you're constantly on edge. Like you're going into like each room thinking, I'm gonna get fucked up here again by someone. Like the only saving grace you have is like to go in the save room with Duke and the shop is. But even then, like sometimes Lady D will be standing right outside it, so you're like, oh crap, I have to like quickly run around, etc. Yeah, I wish the castle played a bigger part in it. It seemed like it seemed like the marketing like lent towards, and they were smart with the marketing. I think like it lent towards the Lady D and her daughters a lot more than the game actually is about them. They're actually a
Yeah.
very small part of it when you consider it.
Well, the first boss battles that you come up against, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly. And even like the ones with the daughters are fairly simple at the end of it. Like once you figure out the first one, it's that one basically repeated but in different settings essentially. And then the battle with Lady D herself it was cool. It was really cool battle actually. But I just wish they had a bit more of the castle and that like lent into like the other areas as well, a bit more naturally. But my ultimate favorite was House Beneviento,
Yeah,
of
oh
course, with
god, yeah.
the dollhouse. I did not expect that. I did not expect that whatsoever. As soon as you first walk into that room and the dolls are sitting there, you know something's like,
Yeah.
you know shit's going down. You're like, and then the body appears of like the dummy body of Mia. And then you obviously you're figuring out how to unlock the other doors, etc. And then you're led down a path, which you see this like. I remember the first time I saw the cord, I was like, okay, am I following this? I was like, okay, I'll follow it. I was like, it's only leading back to the elevator. That's completely fine. And then you hear, I had it on with my Pulse 3D audio headset on, and all I could hear was like a baby like crying, and all of a sudden it's right in your face. It's like, oh shit. That was absolutely terrifying. And then when you have to hide from it the second time as well, when it actually comes into the bedroom you're in, and you have to hide either underneath the bed. I think there's an option to hide in the cupboard as well. I was shitting myself. That was pure horror. That was like PT-esque.
Exactly.
That corridor.
It's the first thing that I thought of. PT straight away. You hear the baby. You look through the door. You see the little fetus on the side, and now you've got a giant one chasing you down the corridor. Because I was streaming this, and I streamed it on the day before release. It came through the embargo was lifted, so I thought we're going to go straight into it. So I played the first 6 hours of this, and that was part of it. And by that point, I was probably 3 hours in. Speaking of which, I didn't even know the Duke was in the castle on my first playthrough. I only realised the second time round that he was down there, so I completely missed that labyrinth with the ball. I finished the game with 2 or 3 of those balls without even using them anywhere.
Okay.
So I didn't even know the Duke was there until the second time round. But yeah, the castle was fantastic. I say reminiscent of the Spencer Mansion. It was the perfect setting to kickstart off. Again, plays into the fan service. They was very smart with the marketing because I genuinely thought she was going to be the big boss of the game. Turns out she was probably one of the easiest ones. But yeah, the dollhouse was probably one of the best settings I have ever played in a horror game. It just had a little bit of everything. It had probably the most puzzles in the entire game. You obviously had Mia's like I say doll body thing that you had to take apart and get some tweezers, find the scissors, cut it off, pull off one of her arms, and then it had one of the emblems on there for you to go and sort the door out so you can go down the well. All that, and then the picture room at the back, where you had to put all the films in the right order for it to then play on the wall. There was like 5 puzzles inside there, and it's like, where are the rest of them? The only one that I could think of after that was when you're trying to do, I can never remember his name, but it was the big fish guy, and you had to put the sequence on the for the power panel. That's the only one the only one else. There's probably going to be more that I've completely missed, but most of the puzzles
in the castle with like the statues, but that was fairly simple. You had to, like, was that blind men or women are blind to the advances of men or something like that.
So that again was very much like the first Resident Evil, where you had the paintings and you had to do it from cradle to the grave kind of thing. So again, it all just comes down to fan service. But that aside, what was your favourite boss battle of them all? Because I know mine might be slightly different to yours. I can tell you which one it wasn't.
Okay, go on.
It was definitely Heisenberg, because that was the cheesiest shit I've ever seen. Well,
that was nuts, though. That was nuts. I'm sure. Again, we'll come on to that probably later when we're discussing other bits. But favorite boss battle, I think I didn't. You know what? It's probably a left field choice, but maybe I'll get to think about it a bit more. I did like. I know it's probably a bit polarizing, but I did like the Moreau one. Like I didn't expect it like him to like just come out of water and just be this massive fish.
Yeah.
With like several eyes. It was decent. It was decent. Like especially with like he was dropping like the acid rain as well.
Yeah.
And you had to
That
figure
caught me
out
out first time round.
yeah, it caught me out as well. Like you had to figure out like where to go under to get shelter. I didn't even know there was like barrels and stuff plastered around. I was running around with my grenade launcher essentially, like trying to take it out. That was fun. You know what? This is gonna again probably differing opinions. I did like the Heisenberg one because it was fucking insane. That's why it was just like I didn't know what was going on, and even like the end when you are beating it, like you're essentially just like there's so much shit going on the screen.
Yeah.
Like you don't
It's
know
like
what's
Wreckfest, Destruction Derby. It's like it's mental. It was Robot Wars and Twisted Metal put together.
I mean, I'm not going to deny that but it was absolutely insane. To feast your eyes on what was happening on the screen. But I think overall, probably was Lady D. It's probably like a bit of a cop out. Probably was Lady D because I thought it was nice the way. Because you think you've killed her with a dagger, like they're talking about earlier in the game, like, oh, it's the dagger that's gonna, that can kill the vampires, etc. And then she just like shrugs it off. It's like, okay, cool. And she just turns into this massive demon flying thing. It's like, oh right, oh, okay, cool. And then she's flying around obviously, and you got to use a sniper. Then she comes. It's about close quarters combat. You got to use a shotgun or pistol. I thought that was like very classic Resident Evil. In terms of like boss battles. But I didn't think they had a bad boss battle per se. There were like those mini boss battles like in between as well, which some of them were cool, like those massive giants. I don't know. So I wanted to discuss this. Did you go back to the dollhouse afterwards? You know that grave area where the piece missing. Did you go back and fit the piece in?
Well, it's funny you should say that, Asim, because that was something else that I was going to bring up. On my first playthrough, there was so much that I'd missed. So stuff that I was watching, one of my favourite things, and this could put me in the category of biggest loser of all time, but I love watching people play games that I love for the first time, whether or not it be on YouTube or on Twitch. And a good friend of the show, Precision, he was streaming it. And I said, I don't want to ruin it for you, but you've just missed something. And it was a slaughterhouse. He just completely walked past it, and he did it twice. And I thought, I can't tell him again because it's going to spoil it. But he walked past the slaughterhouse. And there was another couple of boss battles as well that a lot of people who have watched. I watched Dr. Disrespect stream it as well, and he'd missed a few of them. So it's weird because, like you said, it's open world to a degree. So there's loads of chests that you can pick up. There was some that I didn't have the guitar key the first time round for Louisa's house, I think it was.
Yeah, you have to get the gardener's key, right? Yeah.
So I missed that first time round. Obviously, I missed the 2 labyrinths or 3 labyrinths. So I can't remember how many balls I finished with. So I did those, but I never went back purely because there was a gate in the graveyard that was locked, and I only realised afterwards that when you've done the dollhouse, you could take the gravestone slab back. Is it?
You can, and it reveals, and then. So I'm asking you that because there was like a mini boss there.
Yeah.
A massive giant fucking came out. No, I shat myself as well. I was like, oh, fuck.
I only realised that after the second time round as well. Yeah. So did you go to the slaughterhouse?
I did go to the slaughterhouse, yeah. And there was a giant in the corner, but I don't know if I can't remember if that was like a smaller giant than the other giant or not. I think they were about the same size, but the first time I saw that giant when I went back to the dollhouse, I was like, yeah, this is gonna be easy. All I need to do is put the slab in, and just comes out of nowhere. I was like, oh my days, massive hammer and everything. And then he's summoning like those the normal type vampire type creatures as well. So that was fun. Yeah, I mean, my favorite would probably be Lady D at the end of it all. Although Moreau comes a close second, I think.
Yeah. I mean,
what about yours? Tell us.
I genuinely, I'm going to choose one of the secondary boss battles. I mean, it can't be a secondary boss battle because you have to clear it to get through the next one. But the guy with the giant fan on his head, I thought that was quite a good battle.
Yeah, isn't he like from the movie? Like from the movie, right? They've taken the design. Right?
I only realised that the day. When was it? I was going to put it in there. I thought I can't put another Resident Evil news article in the scoop because Graham's going to flip his lid. But there was one. It was from something Frankenstein. I can't remember what the film was. But yeah, they just basically ripped it off. The only difference was the way that they killed him. So one of the guys in the film cut one of the power lines or the fuel lines, and he set himself on fire. But I thought that was a pretty good. But that was a fair one because you can't see your character. You don't know what part of the room you're in. So when you're moving out the way, you don't know how much gap you've got between him coming at you and you shifting out the way. So I quite enjoyed that one. It did take me a while to figure out what the hell I was doing because I was like, he just keeps on setting on fire. What am I doing? Is he running into the steam? Like, and then
pull himself up, didn't he? Yeah, that's what he's trying to do. Yeah.
So I thought that was an enjoyable boss battle. But I didn't mind the end battle with Miranda.
Yeah, it was good. It seems to have like 4 or 5 phases if you think about it, I guess. But then 2 of the phases kind of mirrored each other, where she turns into like a spider almost.
That petrifies me because I hate spiders as it is. And then it goes dark, and then she starts coming around. I enjoyed that boss battle. I enjoyed it overall. But like you say, there was only the Heisenberg one that pissed me off. Isn't the right phrase? Yeah, it's just like that was straight out the films, and we didn't want any of that kind of stuff. The pure cheese. So that was probably my least favorite. Okay. But yeah, it overall, I think the boss battles worked. I think the secondary bosses, shall we say, that was covering the treasure chests and things like that, I actually really enjoyed. That was cheated because you don't expect it. Like you said, I wouldn't have. I completely forgot to go back there. So him coming out and summoning, and then him being the big fucker that he is. The only time I seen that one was when I was watching Doctor Disrespect. I didn't even know that happened down there. But like going into the slaughterhouse and things, that was a nice change of pace. But yeah, there wasn't really a boss battle that I thought, I can't wait to not do this again. But I'm learning a lot in my second playthrough. Like, I've gone back and I'm doing a lot more things that I didn't do in the first one. I don't know if it's because I was streaming it and I wanted to try and get it done as quick as possible because a 12-hour stream, like it said that I finished the game in a 9.5 the first time round, but I definitely streamed that for at least 14 hours, so it can't count your cutscenes, it can't count other stuff.
Think it does. Yeah, I don't think it does. I think mine ultimately said like just under 10 hours, 9 hours, I think. But yeah, I did go back to like a few sections. I'm one of those people, probably like yourself, that just goes back to every section just to check I can get everything.
I'm trying to make all the houses blue now. Yeah. Like on this playthrough, some of them when I was streaming it, I was like, I can't physically do this because either people would just get pissed off that I'm not advancing the story. I'm pissing myself because I feel like I'm leaving everyone hanging on. But now I'm just playing it in casually. I'm just logging on 2 hours or so. I can go back and do whatever I want. But the things that I didn't like about the game. Now this is probably going to be it's mostly storyline stuff.
Yeah.
Because the game, as we've mentioned, the gameplay, the boss battle, stuff like that was cool. Getting to see Mother Miranda and her test tube babies. The boss battles was really nice. However, the characters that we've been dealt in this, I feel like Chris has come through to save us, to save the plot line. That's the only thing that I can think of as to why he was included. Because Ethan and Mia on their own, I don't want to insult them, but the voice acting was not the best for Ethan.
No, it was not. It's not good. The thing is, I don't know if that's intentional or if it's like a bad choice. After some games, they have that cheesy vibe, and Resident Evil, let's be honest, is like usually has that kind of cheesy vibe. You know, going on from like earlier games. Yeah, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but yeah, it definitely was. It definitely was not great voice acting. It was very wooden. Like, oh, my hand has got chopped off again.
Well, that's it. It's like the amount of personality that Capcom have managed to bring back into the likes of Claire, to Leon, to Jill in the remakes. The amount of personality they put behind those, obviously from the PlayStation 1 era, they brought them into the PlayStation 4/5 era. They've made us care more about these characters that we already cared about. But with Ethan, they didn't even give him a proper backstory. Now, we obviously had him in the last Resident Evil game, in Resident Evil 7. We had Mia then as well. Mia was okay as a voice actor. She did the job well enough. Not that we got to see her much in this game, because obviously she was locked up until the very last second. But Chris coming in, if they didn't bring Chris into this or at the end of Resident Evil 7, I have no idea how they was going to wrap these plot points up. It just... I didn't care about Ethan. I didn't care about Mia. I don't care what they brought to us, because all it seemed to do is just take us away from the stuff. I mean, there isn't much stuff left. We haven't got a Wesker anymore to rely on. I apologise if everyone thinks that they're getting Discord notifications. That's what's coming in my ear. I apologise. That's my PC. But yeah, I didn't care enough about the characters, the plot points from set. The Baker house was so good, and the Baker characters was so good. Evelyn was such a good baddie. Baddie, I'm not 4 years old, but it was such a bad character in a good sense to carry it and drive that storyline of the Baker house. But coming to the village now, if the gameplay didn't work, I think this could have been an absolute car crash for them. And the biggest hole in all of this was the Chris section of the game. Now, I mentioned before that he was the one that kind of rescued the plot point. However, I thought, and I said this to you, the only thing that I could compare it to was playing Doom. If I'm playing a Resident Evil game and I'm looking at my ammo counter in the bottom right-hand corner and I'm seeing that I've got 800 bullets, that is a problem. That's a big problem.
That's a fair point. I think if we're from my point of view on that section, again, it was short enough, I think, and obviously, like, if you've not, that story is like a huge, is like I'm saying, a huge like part of that particular section. But I guess in terms of like the context of that, obviously he's part of this group and that are well armed, etc. So you expect him to be well armed, right? But I get in the sense what you're saying, when people will think it's a Resident Evil game, I shouldn't have like 600 bullets and just like be doing like doom shit, basically like mowing down these Lycans, etc. But I think it was short enough. If it played badly for me, that would have made it worse.
Yeah,
because the mechanics were actually pretty good, and like shooting the I think he had like an assault rifle and he had a pistol with like pretty much a million bullets.
Yeah.
It just made it fun, like shooting down all the Lycans, because like before that, I guess you're kind of hamstrung, like, to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking Chris, who's a bit more of a, I guess, accomplished character in the series, and then also, I guess, combat wise as well. So you'd expect him to have a bit more proficiency in that area, and a bit more backup. So for me, it made sense, but in the sense of like people expecting that pure survival horror, I can get that.
Mm-hmm.
What you're saying is like, it just feels like you're playing like a Doom Eternal type game for like 5-6 minutes. You're playing it probably, because it's a short part. You mow down the Lycans. You have to like take down that the kind of mold that's covering the house, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before you can move forward.
Yeah, you jump down the well as well and do the big boss down there. I apologise. I know people are probably going to be screaming at us because we're not naming all of the monsters by their absolute names. I apologise. This is fresh off the press. But then you jump down the hole and then you have your little laser pen. And then coincidentally, there's a hole in the roof. Where all the nukes are going to come flying through. But yeah, it's straight out of the Resident Evil playbook at this point. So
but I didn't mind that section. I thought it was fine. I mean, it had a bit of kind of panic moments attached to it for me, because I don't know, maybe because I wasn't shooting correctly or anything like that. But I think at one point you get like a couple of waves pretty much instantly coming at you, and you get those armored Lycans as well. And like Chris is reloading for being so proficient, it's fucking slow. I'm like, reload this. Reload.
Yeah. Well, as soon as I seen them coming, it was just a quick grenade. I was playing this on normal, so again, people are probably going to be screaming at this, but I was playing it on normal, so it's just toss a grenade down, watch it like a bowling ball just roll down the hill. If there's enough of them there, it's going to take them all out. They're not even going to get back up again. So I hope when I play this on hardcore, it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult. However, I don't know why I bought the infinite ammo for one of Chris's guns. I didn't pay enough attention when I bought the infinite ammo, so despite me having 800 rounds to start off with, I'm probably never going to go out with them. But yeah,
I think it was like, for me, it was a fine section. It was short enough. It kind of finished with like a mini boss battle, as you said, with that. I don't know the exact name of that character, or like the hairy guy with the Father Christmas
Hagrid
type character. Yeah. And he had that big hammer, and basically he's like armored, so you have to like basically, you can't really shoot him as well. You're basically just dodging him until you can like use the airstrike thing, and basically like his armor wears down, and then it turns to like ash, and that's it, you're done. So it was a fairly decent section, but I'm glad it didn't go on and on.
Yeah.
And kind of outstay its welcome. And they brought back Ethan again through some weird like thing with the mold. Yeah, that I'm not sure what you thought of how it linked back to Seven and like actually he was dead.
Yeah.
I'm not sure what you made of that. No.
This is where the plot points fall down for me, Asim.
Yeah.
And I think this is where, when I said Chris came in to try and tie it all up,
Yeah.
it could have been any other game at this point than a Resident Evil game if Chris wasn't there. They could have slapped whatever label on it they wanted to. And that's, if you're having to rely on characters, fan favorite characters, to try and bring the storyline to a conclusion,
Yeah.
that's where it kind of falls down for me. And that's unfortunate with this because 7 was so good. I mean, again, it couldn't. We didn't know it couldn't have been it might not have even been a Resident Evil game when they was putting it together. I know that sounds ridiculous, but when they brought Chris in at the end of Resident Evil 7 and it was a completely different model, like you're like, who's this guy? And it mentions Redfield on the radio, and you're like, all right, is this Chris? What's up with his face? Like, is it a face transplant? Is he living somewhere else? Is he just moved to South Africa now or something like that? I've no idea. If they're having to tie it up using characters like that to try and bring it back to say, oh, okay, this is pretty cool. You're playing as Chris Redfield. This is the highlight of the game, but it is what it is. But yeah, it's that whole. Again, if I probably should have said this at the beginning, but if you want to listen to this or watching it now and we're absolutely spoiling it for you, that's tough tits. You're 30 minutes into watching this and we're spoiling it for you, but yeah, him mentioning that Evelyn said that Jack Baker killed him and Mia both back at the house, and it was I was 4 hours in, I started to draw and make a line. I was starting to draw things out saying, I swear to fucking God, if this game turns out that I wake up and it was all a dream because she was reading the story at the beginning, that is it. I am never playing another Resident Evil game in my life. And it was semi-accurate. After the story was told, the story was based off a book that was in the game.
Yeah. Essentially, yeah. Like the fish you see and the witch you see in
Yeah.
Miranda, essentially. Yeah. So they were kind of foreshadowing like what's to come, essentially.
Yeah, and then obviously at the very end, it says that the father came to help the child and the wife escape from the dark shadows, and you're like, starting to pull my hair out a little bit. And then obviously you see right at the very end that Rose is now a teenager. This is probably leading us to Resident Evil 9. It's been said that this game has been in development for as long as Resident Evil 8 was. It's at the very end. It says the father's tale has now been told. Does that mean now that the next game is going to consist of Rose and Mia? Are these two characters that I think are going to drive the next Resident Evil? Potentially 1 or 2 games. Are these characters that we think are capable of telling a very good Resident Evil? How do we care about the characters? Asim is what I'm trying to get out.
So with Ethan, I've been thinking about this actually since I finished it. I think Ethan and Mia, but especially Ethan, I think they're just vessels to like progress to like a bigger story where it involves maybe Chris obviously, and maybe it brings back Jill or Leon, etc. Maybe and they're fighting a bigger fight. I think they're vessels for these 2 games that have come. And I think you're right. I think the story at best was probably just there to kind of link things through to like the past and like look forward to the future in terms of what's coming, because obviously you read the thing on the desk at the end where it's like Spencer's been there to work.
That was cool. That was cool. Very, very cool. I liked that a lot.
Yeah, so you have those links coming in, so I just feel like Ethan and Mia were like just vessels for Rose, essentially, who I feel like will probably become a bigger character.
Yeah.
Going forward, because she's obviously got some mold abilities within her skill, and maybe she's working with Chris and that organization because they're not even part of the BSAA, are they?
No, it's Blue Umbrella? Is it?
Yeah, Blue Umbrella. Yeah. So they're kind of like a good umbrella, if that makes sense.
Anti-umbrella.
Yeah. So yeah, I feel like Rose is probably the bigger character to come out of these 2 games, like 7 and 8. And Ethan was just like, just a bit of a vessel, really. So hopefully with 9, if you say they have been working on it for a while, they've fleshed out a better story where actually you get to care about Rose going forward if she is going to be a bigger part of the universe. Fingers crossed. But yeah, I think you're right. The story is just there to like link the dots together. But what I felt overall is like the game mechanics itself, as we discussed, kind of like distinguish themselves like to elevate the game
Yeah.
a bit higher than it probably would have if it was kind of just focused on the story. But yeah, let's see what happens with 9. I guess I think Rose will be obviously a big part of it. I hope they don't do co-op. I really hope they don't do co-op.
Yeah.
5 was not a good game. Well, I don't know. It was okay. 5 was okay co-op. But it was it just felt like an action game. There was no survival horror, like no horror at all. Really, it was just like, yeah, there was few like panic moments where you got like waves of enemies coming at you. But yeah, I hope they do co-op, and if they do co-op, it needs to be done in a way, because I feel like survival horror in co-op only works when you're playing together, but you're in different areas.
Yeah.
So you're like, and you're both helpless, but like you can speak to each other, but you're both helpless. So maybe you're on like a walkie-talkie or something like that.
You see, Resident Evil Revelations 2 did that very well.
Yeah.
You had one person who was obviously capable with a gun. The other person isn't. They usually have a torch, and they'll be able to try and find new bits of ammo, new bits of gems, and things like that for you to be able to use later down the road. So if they go down the Revelations, which apparently is also being looked at. I can't remember. Was it called It might have even been changed the name. I've heard Resident Evil Outrage being touted out many times. So I'm interested to see how that comes about. But yeah, like you said, this is a proper blasphemous statement to make, and I'm going to die on this hill. Albeit Resident Evil 4 was a very, very good game, and it revolutionized the way that we play video games with the over-the-shoulder camera, your inventory management, and things like that. I don't think it was a Resident Evil game. And I mean that because it was the start of the quick time events. It's the start of the action adventure rather than the survival horror elements of the games. And I love Resident Evil 4. I've bought it pretty much in every single console there has ever been. It's just not my favourite. I feel like it was 5 and 6 were a byproduct of what happened with Resident Evil 4. The Resident Evil 4 sold a shitload. Resident Evil 5 sold a shitload. Resident Evil 6 was one of the best-selling games of the franchise. And that was probably the worst. So just because it sells well, does that mean that's the direction they have to go in? I'm glad that they changed it with Resident Evil 7. Resident Evil 8 has come out and it feels like a mishmash of all of those games put together, especially 4, which isn't the worst game to try and emulate in terms of like your inventory management. The Duke, how can we forget about the Duke? One of the best characters that's come out of this game. One piece of information that I completely missed in my first playthrough, which I'm so glad, and I've saved it on my PlayStation. I can't wait to post it. Is when he mentions about the merchant from Resident Evil 4, and he goes, "What are you buying?" Ha! That's one of my old friends used to say, and I'm like, "Oh my god!" But again,
I think there is a bigger story behind him. I think maybe hopefully fingers crossed he like comes back.
Yeah,
in, like the next game.
I agree, but you know what? When you take down Heisenberg, Mother Miranda turns up, and she turns into the old lady, and I think she turns into somebody else as well, and then she turns back into herself. So she was clearly all of those characters. I thought the Duke was going to get up and walk around. I thought she was going to be the Duke as well.
That would be interesting.
But obviously she could well have been. The Duke knew an awful lot, but he didn't let up how he knew the information, which hopefully we will find more about later down the line. But the Duke was definitely one of the
maybe he's like an 8-1 type character for the new franchise.
Yeah,
let's see.
I hope so, because he was a fantastic character, and I hope we get to see more of him. But yeah, to round this up in a nice little bow. My conclusion of this, it was a 6 out of 10 game, and the saving grace of it was absolutely the gameplay mechanics. Now I'm playing it for a second time. Now I'm putting no pressure on the storyline, more emphasis on the gameplay, more emphasis on me completing the mercenary modes and stuff like. Because I love all that shit. Raid mode on Revelations, sign me up for that all day. I don't have to think about it. I can just go and shoot shit in the face, rack up the points, move on to different places. And now I'm playing it for the second time. I'm willing to change my opinion. If I can give a half point, I'd give it a 7.5. If I can't, it's a 7.
Fair.
So I said I'm always happy to change my mind. I'm always happy to be open-minded when it comes to stuff. But I feel like you play a Resident Evil game for its storyline, albeit most of the time it's usually batshit crazy and you have absolutely no idea what's going on. But this is too much of a stretch for me to consider it a mainline Resident Evil game and one that I can enjoy. That said, I am still enjoying playing it, which says a lot. Like Samantha keeps on asking me what it is that I'm playing tonight. It's Resident Evil. I will continue to be playing this game. Every other game that I've got has been put on hold until I finish this game to a standard that I want. Usually, when Resident Evil Portal decides to get its shit together and I can transfer my saves over to find out what it is that I'm missing. But
Yeah.
at the moment in time, I want to try and clear as many challenges as I can. I want to try and level up my guns as much as I can. I want to try and beat this game on Village of Shadows. That is my aim. Whether or not it takes me a month, 2 months, I don't care. But the mechanics of the game is what keeps on bringing back. 7.5 if I'm allowed a half point. 7 if I'm not. So that's my opinion. What is yours? What is the all-encompassing Asim Tanvir review?
I mean, I think I'll sum it up in the sense that I think it's mechanically, gameplay wise, it is a fantastic game.
Yeah.
It has one standout section, like absolutely, like it will. When like people talk about like when it comes to like game of the year stuff, talk about best moments in the game of the year, that would be for me like definitely
Absolutely.
up
Yeah.
there. It was like outstanding stuff. Second half lets it down a bit,
Yeah.
but still I still had a blast playing it. Overall, yes, as you touched on, like the stories seem like more of a means to an end rather than like being like the main course. So I think overall I'd probably give it an 8. I liked it. I didn't love it.
Yeah.
And I played it, and I probably will play it again and like do the extra stuff and go through it on the hardest difficulty at some point as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I don't know if you read there was an article on Games Industry about like people talking about the history of Resident Evil, etc. I think it summed up in a way like I'd say it's obviously it's its 25th anniversary this year. So I think it's summed up as a kind of best quotation marks best moments of Resident Evil taken from like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 even if you don't like those games. It is a kind of a best moments or a best of or a best hits kind of combination almost of those things, and it almost nails it like into like a 9 or a 10, but yeah, it's missing certain things from being like up there with like Resident Evil 2 for me. It goes strays a bit too far from the usual path, shall we say.
Yeah.
But 8 out of 10.
Yeah. You see, when you were mentioning about the giant baby Rose, I genuinely think that's going to be up there with the dogs jumping through the window in the first one, and then Nemesis jumping through the window as you come down the RPD in the third one. That is going to be up there as like the most terrifying points of a Resident Evil game for me. It's just that good.
It's excellent. It's excellent. And I think Capcom have a way, just going back to that Games Industry article, they have a way of like, survival horror means different things to different people. Like to you, it means, probably like Resident Evil 2, etc., Code Veronica maybe. But other people, it means like, it means more in terms of like psychological horror, which is kind of the Dollhouse bit has. Some people it means like just panicking moments where you're just being swarmed by enemies. You're like have very little bullets. I think Capcom do that with the time that's gone on with the series. They've changed enough of the series at the right time. Sometimes they've gone a bit too far with it. Maybe 6 probably being the best example of that. It was a bit too much of a mishmash and like trying to be too much of. It was basically trying to please everyone. And you can't do that. You have to stick to a vision. But usually they're really good at kind of reinventing a series, and even if you look back at stuff like Devil May Cry, Monster Hunter, etc., they're really good at reinventing a series for the time it's being released in. And I think even there are some missteps here. Hopefully, with 9 and like what they go on to do forward, they try to balance that as best as possible. I think 7 was getting there, absolutely, and 8 kind of getting a few missteps. But I have faith in them. Like they will bring it back to like that upper echelon in terms of the Resident Evil levels. They have it. Like you have that section. You have that first half of the game. You have it there.
Well,
so
like I say, that's taken huge inspiration from Silent Hill, though, hasn't it? Like you say, the psychological horror is what Silent Hill is notorious for, and that's where the two elements of Resident Evil and Silent Hill are both overlapped. Because for me, as a Silent Hill fan as well, that was always a psychological. Resident Evil was the survival horror. They're both two completely different. One's fighting zombies, one's fighting like, especially I think it's the third one that is just like full on mental illness. That's what they're talking. The whole game is inspired by it. So then you, like you said, with the injection of a lack of Gears of War, shall we say, they're taking that hard mode mentality where you're just mowing them down constantly as the waves and waves of these enemies are coming through. So like I say, Capcom are very good at reinventing the wheel and reinventing how we play a Resident Evil game. There is DLC that could potentially pick up the pieces of what we don't know. So we've seen that with Resident Evil 7 with the end of Zoe. And then we had the Birthday Volume 1 and 2, I think, and then like the Blackjack stuff as well. So we have had DLC that has picked up a few plot points, but we're hoping for a lot more with Resident Evil 8 and what potentially it can bring as a DLC. Whether or not we're going to see that remains to be seen. But it's all roads lead to the next Resident Evil. Whether or not it's going to be New Revelations, whatever this outrage is going to be. I don't mean that as a community. I mean that it was. I think it was codenamed Resident Evil Outrage. So we'll look to see that, and then whatever happens with Resident Evil 9 later down the line. But again, this when it all said and done, is a very, very good game. For me, it's not a Resident Evil game. It could have been anything. The inclusion of Chris kind of brings it back into a Resident Evil game. However, it's still a fantastic game. It's definitely still worth the money that you're paying for it. I will still recommend this game to anybody who is paying full whack for it. It's very difficult to make a survival horror game last 60 hours. It's never been done before. I can't see it ever being done. It's just not a genre of games that you can make last like you can with an Assassin's Creed or a Far Cry or an Elder Scrolls kind of game. You can't drag it out. The plot points, as you've seen towards the end of the game, become a little bit batshit. It's like pulling stuff out of a hat. The first 4 hours of this game are solid. But overall, I can still recommend this game. There's still a lot to dissect with it. I will continue to play this on all the difficulties to try and find out the stuff that I missed from my first playthrough. I imagine sooner or later you'll be able to play this on the Village of Shadows difficulty. I will try it at some point as well with a fresh pair of boxers on. To try and get myself away from it. But yeah, as a final thought, I can absolutely recommend this game. I'd give it a lot of shit. I've dissected it a lot over on social media. I've tried to stay away from any kind of spoilers. This is the first time I'm openly speaking about this game. And again, I couldn't think of anyone better to be able to dissect it with. As a super fan of this franchise as well, you know the history, you know what it takes to be a Resident Evil game, and you know what you expect from it. So therefore, it's much easier for me to have this conversation with you than anybody else. So I do appreciate you joining me today, Asim, as we went through the Resident Evil Village game. Is there anything else that you would like to finish off this conversation with, Asim?
Yeah, no, just to echo your thoughts, I would recommend it if you can stomach some horror, some panic, some genuinely scary moments, and having a change of pants at hand for one of the sections. Then I recommend playing it, even though this, as you said, the second half is not as strong as the first.
Yeah,
it's still fun because the mechanics are good. So yeah, good game, and I would like to see some DLC as you mentioned, and if not, look forward to 9, whatever it is.
Yeah. Also, if you're playing this for the first time and you're about an hour and a half in and you realise that your hand has been chopped off and you want to super glue it back on again with some medicine, please feel free to do that. Otherwise, go and see a doctor, because believe me, a little bit of medicine that you're going to pour on will not stitch your coat back onto it again. Don't forget that it wasn't just the hand; the coat ended up getting stitched back on again. So yeah, there's no way that we're doing a Resident Evil podcast and I'm not mentioning that, because that is horrendous.
That was bad. I can't defend that. That was terrible.
But guys, thank you very much for joining us. Hopefully I'm going to try and get this out in the next couple of days. We're recording this on Thursday the 13th of May. Yeah, we're in May. So it's been recorded on Thursday. Hopefully I'll try and get it out over the weekend. Do feel free to follow us on all of our social media platforms. We are on YouTube. We are on SoundCloud, as well as Google Play, Spotify, iTunes, and SoundCloud. Go follow Asim on Twitter. It's Asim Tanvir over at Twitter, is it?
Yeah, just my name. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, it's on the screen there for you if you are watching this on YouTube. We've got Webinio. Follow us on all of our social medias at Ice Cream Uploads across all major social media profiles. Now, Asim, there is usually 2 words that we usually finish our shows with, and no, they are not suck it. This is not Degeneration X. However, I would absolutely love to have that as an emote in our chat. I want the people to look after themselves, but what do you want them to do as well, Asim?
Stay frosty.
Yeah, take it easy, guys. Peace and love. See you next time.